Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's Autoimmune Table Talk. We're actually breaking down the topic of why is it audacious to actually have hope? Stay tuned because we got a whole panel for you. And in Autoimmune Table Talk Live, you're not going to want to miss. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's Autoimmune Table Talk Live. I'm Maggie MD, and I'm a functional and holistic medicine physician and the creator of the Transform Protocol to transform autoimmune disease around naturally. Today, we have a big topic around how our thoughts actually influence our results. And for those of you who are joining us right now, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook group, or a Facebook page, if you can give us a follow, ring the bell, subscribe, that'd be great. But right now, most importantly, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart. And in the comment section, I'd love if you can tell me a little bit about what autoimmune struggles or symptoms you've been dealing with. That would be really great. So today, we have three guests that I'm going to introduce right away. We are exploring the topic of around skepticism, fear, and why it seems such an audacious task to even have hope, because we hear it all the time. So right now, I'm going to first bring up Laura. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Absolutely. So my name is Laura Mazzotta, and I am a spiritual healer, a Reiki master, and a therapist of 20 years. And I have had chronic illness for about 6 or 7 years at this point, and joined Maggie in the spring. And I love and have been devoted for ages to assisting people with healing at many different layers. And Maggie was exactly who I was waiting for, like in terms of working with the physiology, and that in a natural way. And I'm just so grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next, we have Monica. Monica was one of our former alumni who's actually one of the coaches in our program right now. Monica, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, Maggie, and hi, everyone. I'm Monica Cole. I'm actually a human genome mapper, a geneticist by profession. And I have had this chronic illness now for well over 20 plus years. And I was very grateful when last year I found Dr. Maggie, and I got my answers that I was looking for. No one turned around my health journey the way Maggie has. And I am grateful for this. I really am.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you. And last but not least, we got Jamie, also a former alumni who's currently one of the coaches in our program. Jamie?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Like Laura, I'm a psychotherapist by trade. And like Dr. Maggie said, I'm an alumni of this program. I found myself here about a year and a half ago with just a whole myriad of symptoms. I really enjoyed my time with Dr. Maggie because, like everyone said, it addressed really the physiological issues, but also it really upped my mindset game. As a therapist, I was kind of shocked and a little disturbed, I guess, with how little I really understood about how mindset plays a role in chronic pain and chronic illness. So that's been my major takeaway.
I love that. So I love the fact that we have three kick-ass women here who are joining me on this table talk. First of all, secondly, all three are former alumni, our current alumni who've been through our program before over the past several years. And thirdly, I think who better than people who've actually been there and done that to be able to share their experiences about this, because all of us, including myself, have sat at the other side of this camera watching other people telling us that they got their autoimmunity together or they have something that works, or we're watching something where we're like, is what they're really saying true? Are they lying to me? We've all been on the other end of receiving and hearing people talk about their health journeys with skepticism or fear. And I myself was one of those people. And it's so interesting to me that we talk to, at least 100 people every week about their autoimmunity. And one of the biggest takeaways we have is that there's a lot of fear out there. People are really scared to be disappointed again. And people literally say, I am scared to have hope again. Literally scared to death to have hope again. That's one thing we hear. The other thing we hear on the other side is, I'm skeptical. And the more good things I see coming from your program, the more skeptical I am. It's impossible that it's this good, or it's impossible your Google reviews look like this. Therefore, it must be fake. So it's really fascinating that to me, like both of these types of responses, whether it's fear or skepticism, to me is rooted in a lot of the trauma that we've experienced. And a lot of it is based around fear and past experiences. I would love for us, if you guys would love to, I'd love to share where you were before the program when you were watching one of these videos. What went through your head? Like, what was your biggest fear? Like, what were you being fed by fear or scarcity or skepticism? Anyone?
So for me, I was honestly, I was relieved at first because I was just like, oh, thank God someone's doing this, right? But I was honestly, my biggest fear was getting worse, even temporarily.
Mm.
I was like, if I feel any worse than I do right now, I'm going to lose it. Like, that was my biggest concern because I was like, I've been feeling this way for however long, for years. And if I start something, a new protocol that makes me feel worse even a little bit, I'm like, I was worried that I was going to get depressed or upset, like really upset and not be able to get out of it. And so that's what I love so much about being in this space and in this program is that it's just couched in safety. Like you are so beautifully held at all layers. And every time you say like, ooh, this isn't making me feel well, Dr. Maggie's like, okay, done with that. Let's do this. Like she's got an answer for freaking everything. FYI.
But what I'm hearing from you, Laura, is that your fear of getting worse was one of the issues. If I do nothing, I will get worse. That's a well-founded fear, right?
Yep.
But there's also a second fear is the fear of trying something new that could possibly make me get worse.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are two very real fears. What about you, Jamie or Monica?
Yeah. So I think mine would be not that the program wouldn't work or doesn't work. It's just that it wouldn't work for me. Because, and I think you call that like the special zebra phenomenon.
Super special zebra phenomenon, I call it.
Yeah. And I think that had been my experience. I would go to different specialists and they would give me suggestions. And then for me, it wouldn't work. And they'd be like, what? This works for everybody. It doesn't work for you, you know? And so I kind of started to get this mindset or this belief about, you know, everything works for everybody else, but nothing is going to work for me.
Will this work for me is your question. And it's
Yes.
a belief that I have a super special problem nobody can solve.
Yes. I am just that special.
You know, I laugh at danger. Whenever someone says a story like that, I actually typically can't get help but laugh in some ways because it's such a common belief.
Yeah.
And in some ways is a belief I myself had as well. So I totally get that. What about you, Monica?
So for me, both fear and hope were the same, two different sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
My fear was that either I was going to die at a point and there was no resurrection for me. Or the hope was this is a person who is logically laying out all these testimonials of people who have actually come out through this as a success. So my logical mind would always tell me, think with hope, and I would push forward with it. But my fear was death is the only outcome.
Oh.
That was my fear. And that kept me from a lot of things till I said, that's it. I have to take up the hope now. That was the only path left for me.
So for me, it sounds like fear of death was big, but you were balancing it with also your logical mind and your scientific mind. There's proof right here. So that's how you balanced it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about my own fear and skepticism. And for me, you know, I've done videos about the role of trauma, and I think that's a big deal for a lot of us, whether it's, you know, physical, emotional, medical trauma. I think that really leaves an imprint. And for me, I mean, I'm using a different example just because, let's say for me, one of the things for me was something very huge, devastating happened to me where the clinic that I owned was actually embezzled, not by one, but multiple people. And it was a huge betrayal. It was the huge hit financially. And what that created in me from that bad experience is I've been really burned, and I honestly was really burned, right? And I went into protection, which is, well, I'm going to believe now that everyone is evil. Everyone's evil. Just like how many people out there thinks all doctors are evil, or all doctors don't know what they're doing, or all people are bad, or nobody can help me. But I feel like once we've been traumatized or we've been burned really hard in whatever way, right? Our brain goes into protection mode, which is go to a belief that we think is going to protect us. So for me, I went to protectionism, where I thought everybody's evil, everybody else is getting me, everybody else is going to take something from me. And therefore, I'm going to really be on guard. And I was the highly skeptical person. And for years, every time I would meet someone, even if people try to get close, I would be really shut down. On the outside, looked normal, right? But I was really, really shut down. So I was very skeptical of people. And that my biggest fear was that people really are all evil and that they're going to do nothing but take everything from me, including my life, was what it felt like.
Yeah.
And so skepticism was my MO, and it really came from trauma. And I could see, we've talked about it, so many people have medical trauma, where because they've had a bad medical experience, they have the same thing and same belief that all medical professionals are bad, all medical care is bad. And so they become very skeptical of all medicine, all medical doctors, or anyone. So in that sense, that was my biggest fear. But what it brought me was to the biggest rock bottom of my life. I was the most isolated, lonely, and poor individual in the world in a lot of ways, because I was so worried that everyone's going to was evil and going to take something, that I ended up leading a very lonely and sick life. I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker, continuing that trauma on my own body over and over and over again. So for me, I had no choice. I mean, I was gonna die hanging on. I could be right and think everyone is evil and hang on to that belief. I would rather be right and dead than to shift. And that was where had to get to a choice where I'm like, I got to shift out of the skepticism, because it's not getting me anywhere, and it's making me sicker and more lonely than ever. So skepticism, to me, in my case, came from extremely traumatic experience and criminal activity from people, right? So that, I think it's a response. My fear was as a response to trauma, and I went into skepticism as protection. And so one of the things I want to ask you guys was, I know, Monica, for you, the way out of skepticism for you was, you said there's logical proof this works.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound to me like Jamie or Laura, you both of you were not struggling with skepticism, were you?
Not in the way that I think Monica was.
Yeah. One of the things I think is important, I noticed is that, in all the mindset work that we do in our program, one of the things I talk about is focus is power. And what you focus on grows. And that comes from the very root of my own experience. If you wake up every morning thinking, who else is going to be evil? What evil things are evildoers going to do? Then you're going to manifest. What's my brain going to look for all day long? Oh, there's another evil thing. There's another evil person. Like, what you literally focus and your brain starts to look for, and that's what grows in your life. And even if someone was generous with me, kind to me, it was really hard for me to even see it, because what is my brain looking for? The evidence that I'm right. Your brain is unconsciously always looking for evidence to support that you're right. So I think about that. And Laura, when you or Jamie, both of you work in the counseling field, there's a lot of people out there who are skeptical and fearful. What are some of your own experience or insights into this? How do people cross that? And should they? I mean, it's protecting them, right? It's protection, right? How do people cross that?
It is. And honestly, I love talking about this, because I really think that it's rooted in a space of a lack of deserving. Like, people don't feel that they deserve to be treated that way. They don't feel like they deserve to spend the money on themselves, to invest that level of time, energy, and devotion to themselves and putting themselves first. They feel guilty about that. And so how do you get through that? We need to go through a process of forgiveness, first and foremost, for the other people in your life, right? Including the medical doctors, including the medical field, going through a process of forgiveness there, not necessarily with them, but one that you just do internally, that then follows with a forgiveness of yourself for any choices that you feel you've made that have gotten you to the point that you are now. right? I think that's critical.
It's so funny because, I've actually done videos and on many interviews, I've actually said that the number one emotion that actually keeps people with autoimmunity sick is actually lack of forgiveness.
Yep.
And it's not always towards other people, it's towards ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that story I just told, it's not that all people are evil. Wasn't even the main thing. The biggest fear I had was now I can't trust. I've been embezzled, and I can't trust myself. I shouldn't forgive myself for letting that happen to me. Therefore, I am untrustworthy.
Mm.
And that's what happens when you don't forgive yourself, is it actually erodes your belief in yourself.
Yeah.
Well, and I even tell clients, I'm like, you need to like drink, even if it's just lemon water, right? Like drink that every morning. The more you can consistently take action towards your own well-being, the more reliable you become to your own system.
Actually, you lose the faith in your own consistency.
Yep.
You just lose faith in every action of your own. So encouraging them to actually just take one step at a time, may it be just drinking lemon water, as you said, actually makes them feel that, yes, they can do it. They have forgotten the path that, yes, you are capable. Your confidence is so eroded in yourself completely.
That's interesting you guys say that, because one of the reasons we just finished our 10-day water challenge in the Facebook group that we just did. And that was one of the biggest feedback I had from a lot of people, was that a lot of people didn't feel like that was something they could do for a full 10 days. That the confidence had eroded such that 10 days, I can't do this, or I won't do this. And the interesting thing was at the after party, one of the things that people said was that they had never gotten this much support in a community to be consistent, to actually nurture and self-care to the point where they actually see the results keep stacking up more and more and more, that there was undisputable proof that they could believe in themselves, they could achieve this, and that the community support and mentorship actually works because they had indisputable results from their own body. And that's the piece that I think there isn't a process out there and to help people recover from this type of trauma and erosion of their physical being and their health and their mental health.
Yeah, what I found, especially for myself, and then in hearing other people's stories, is what was happening with our own body was sort of a metaphor for what was happening emotionally, mentally, right? So for me, I had these issues because of my trauma about my inability to handle life, handle my life. It was a capability problem, right? And then my body started to mirror that, right? Now it wasn't capable of keeping me well. It wasn't capable of healing. And so I started to look at things as a metaphor. And so when I see people that come into my practice and they're having lots of issues, we start to look at their illness metaphorically to see what's going on behind the scenes. And like what Laura was talking about, a lot of it is rooted in unforgiveness, both of other people and of yourself, right? And so when you can't forgive yourself, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, then you start to lose, there's this innate self-trust, right, that you don't have. And so it sounds like that's what you guys were talking about, even in adding little things like water every single day. You're starting to build your own self-trust, and you're knowing that you're capable of doing certain things, right? So building that self-trust, building that capability, I think is really key.
I've seen each of you in your own way during the program have that point where it was your lowest point in some way. And Jamie, I remember like towards the end of the program, you actually had a medical procedure.
I did.
That like brought you to your knees and your career to your knees.
Mm-hmm.
And you were at your lowest point where literally you couldn't even trust that you could sit up for an hour or even 20 minutes.
Right.
Dealing with all those neurological symptoms and POT symptoms.
Right.
And I remember I had a come to Jesus conversation with you. Excuse the metaphor.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I think at that point, were you even working, or you had to stop working because you were feeling so sick?
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't even know if I can't work, and I don't even know I could do what you're asking me. I'm like, what do you mean? Of course you're going back to work. What do you mean? Of course you can do that.
Yeah.
And I even had to say, even if you don't believe it, you're going to have to borrow the
That's
belief
right.
from me, because I've seen hundreds of you have this happen, and I've seen hundreds of this get better. So even if you don't have that certainty and you don't have the belief, you can borrow it from me, and damn it, you're going to borrow it from me.
Totally. And that, I think, was so huge for me, because not only, are you an expert telling me, I've seen this, you're going to be fine, this is possible, you're not too far gone, but then you also hear the testimonies of other people. And then I also started reading books on my own about neuroscience and rewiring the brain and mindset, and hearing those stories. And so I just chose at that point to stop Googling symptoms, because everything told me I was doomed, right? Everything told me, you're not going to get better. This is your life. So I stopped doing that, and I started surrounding myself and filling my brain with stories of hope, with stories of possibility. And that's what I lived in. That's what I chose to marinate myself in day and night, day and night, day and night, after the come to Jesus moment with you. Because I'm like, this is, at some point, this is going to be a mindset thing for me. At some point I have to decide that I'm going to go in a certain direction, and then make the choices to get myself there.
Well, I think that's clearly the focus is power. And you were focused on the fact that, no, I'm never going to be able to do any of this again. And guess what? You were growing and manifesting. And I was like, no, girl, we're interrupting this right now. And then you said, you made the decision to be open to being coached about this. And you shifted your focus to, hell yes, of course I can do this. Hell yes, of course I can better. And hell yes, I'm going to actually surround myself with people and videos and stuff of all the people who get better. I mean, think about this. How many hours a week do you think most people with autoimmunity and chronic disease spend Googling all the stuff that can go wrong?
A lot.
And and you said that, Jamie, you said that yourself, right? You
said,
I was Googling all the things, people with POTS, or people with this neurological condition, people with this migraine from this procedure, or this or that. Like, what else can go wrong? And you were already living as if you were dying and dead. Or you're going to die. And shifting the focus, I think, is a tool, right? I think, go ahead, Laura.
I just love what Jamie said about deciding, because she's totally right. You just need to decide. And it's funny, because those people who say, well, I can't do this program because I'm too sick, I've been let down too many times, I can't tolerate it. That's actually the exact reason you need to do it, right? Because you need, I got to be honest, like, one of the biggest things that I can say I've gotten from being ill is growing that hell up. Like, growing up and learning. I needed to be held accountable to take care of myself in the way that my body desired it, but that I was like, no, having like a tantrum about, no, I don't want to do that, right? And so I was held accountable and was almost like trained in this program as well, just automatically, where this just, honestly, I'm doing this because it feels loving, right? I'm being so loving and so good to myself. And it felt like a chore before, but it's like having that accountability and deciding, yes, I'm going to allow somebody to, like Maggie said, to guide me so I can borrow her mentality for a little bit. So I feel like I can do it on my own. And honestly, friends, it doesn't take very long. Like a couple months, and you're like, yep, I got this. I know what I'm doing,
And Laura, don't you think that once you adopt this about your health, it transfers to other areas of your life too?
Oh my gosh.
Oh yes, it does. It does.
Yeah, I've become a fierce guardian of my emotional life, my mental life, right? A fierce guardian.
Fierce guardian right there. Boop, boop, boop.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's beautiful to see what you've done with being your healthy boundaries and seeing your strength in that. I mean, there's no waiver.
I can't. My health depends on it. My life depends on it. I can't waver.
One thing I've seen Laura do, and I'm just going to comment on Laura here, a little kudos to Laura, is shit went down. Shit went down in the middle while you were in the program. There was a lot of stuff that was going on with you and your health. It was a journey through that out the other side. But what I really loved, and this is a tool for everybody, another tool nugget was you had a wonderful sense of humor.
Yes.
You do. You had an incredible sense of humor where you were able to laugh at the bleakest moments or make light of it. I've never heard so much about someone's bowel movements. No, I'm kidding.
All day, Dr. Maggie.
But I love that you were able to have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
You know, um, if you guys haven't watched the show Ted Lasso, I love Ted Lasso. And one of the things that he tells us, one of the Ted Lassoisms is he says, be a goldfish. They lost this giant game and he goes, be a goldfish. He's like, what's the memory of a goldfish? 3 seconds. So the goldfish is like, next. and one of the things about you, Laura, is that we could be having a conversation about a really bleak, terrible time. And literally, I just see you, 3 seconds is up, shift, laugh, make light of it.
Yeah.
There that is. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Humor is a really strong tool in resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
And laughing is a quick way to shift. And I think it's a pattern interrupt. Your humor interrupts your pattern.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And because I do feel, yes, I think one of the biggest things that happens with autoimmune that I see mindset wise is shifting into victim mentality, right? We can easily shift into victim mentality. I've done it so many times. And I do believe that we need to honor it because it's coming up for a reason. So it's like, okay, honor that this is coming up for a moment or two, but then get the lesson, get the understanding of moving forward to who you would desire to become, make your decision, like Jamie said, and snap out of it.
Yep.
I think this needs to be a conversation about what is the difference between being victim and being responsible. There's a big difference. And it is really rooted in our languaging and everything. When we are a victim, we think things are happening to us. Okay? When we are responsible, we're actually creating this, we're responsible for this experience we've created for ourselves. So most of us are living in victim. It's everybody else's fault because they failed me. It's because I can't do this. I was fired from this. I was that. That's why I'm here. Whereas being responsible is, you know, I made that choice that created that. I made that choice that created that. I'm choosing to think in this way. And that's why I feel depressed. I'm choosing, you know, like there's a big difference between being victim and being responsible. And yet, most of us are spending most of our time as a victim, like as if all this stuff is happening to us and we have no personal responsibility in this.
Because we're scared to take it on, because then we're like, what happens if I fail? Then what's going to happen, right? And if
So you fail anyway? So you fail anyway?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like owning full responsibility was very daunting to me too, because part of that felt like I was responsible then for how I had gotten to this point. And yes, I do have I do have responsibility for that. And so once I own that, I actually have control over my next steps. It's beautifully liberating.
It is actually an experience because I had Laura on one of the pod meetings with me. And yeah, she started off with a pod meeting. There was a little tantrum, and then she shifted her gears real rapidly. And actually, it was a learning moment was right there. So it was Laura's growth happening right there in just 40 minutes with us in the pod.
Yeah.
Well, and to me, I actually think none of us are perfect.
Nope.
And I actually like the fact that even as you say, I'm the leader in this program, right? I'm growing every single day. I'm being smacked with life lessons every single day. And it is not shameful for me to admit this is an area I'm working on to grow. In fact, that happened today. You guys saw the post in the group. I made a post talking about my personal area of growth that I needed to work on, that I was practicing, that I was sharing with everyone in the group. And I think that's really important to know is that life is practicing the skill. Like Laura had to practice to laugh at danger and sadness, right? Jamie had to practice shifting from I feel sorry for myself versus I'm responsible for what I think and do now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there had to be a shift that had to happen there, being responsible for yourself.
Totally. And, I want to really, I guess I want to say that not everybody, but a lot of people that end up, at a really desperate chronic health place, they have had situations where there's been a lot of trauma or abuse, even sometimes in your primary or foundational relationships, right? And so there is this element where you were victimized and maybe it wasn't even, your pain wasn't even acknowledged, right? Like, hey, what are you crying about? Or, hey, you're too sensitive, right? So there is this space, like what Laura said, when I'm a victim comes up, there is a space to acknowledge that, right? You don't want to gaslight yourself like you had been gaslit by other people, right? You want to acknowledge your pain. You want to acknowledge this sucks. I wish this weren't happening. This isn't great. But then if you stay in that place, then now you're victimizing yourself, right? Now you're your own abuser. You're keeping yourself in a negative space.
That is a really good point. When you victimize yourself, you are your own abuser.
Yeah. So you don't want to repeat that cycle. Yeah.
That's really it.
Line.
Go ahead.
A very thin line out there. Every time a physician would turn around and say that this is a problem that you're self-creating yourself, is what you actually keep internalizing. My thought process was, if this is what I was doing to myself, then I should find my way out of it myself, right? If none of the people, the physicians, are giving me the answers, let me go find out my answers.
Well,
But I refuse to be the victim in this all. I refuse to be. So it was a choice.
This is a fine line that you're talking about, Monica, that I think is a really good distinction, which is a lot of people are like, I have mystery illness, zebra, I have Sjogren's, I have RA. It's my fault I have it. If I'm being responsible, means it's my fault I have it. That's not true. That's actually victimizing yourself. What we're saying is, like for me, I have Hashimoto's mixed connective. I'm going to say I have Hashimoto's, I have mixed connective tissue disorder. I didn't cause that to happen. However, I am responsible for everything I do with that information.
Right.
Yes. And piggybacking on what Jamie was saying too, like about the trauma that has existed, right? From all the things that we've been through or that people have been through. It's like, okay, well, if you sit in the past and you constantly rehash it, you're choosing to bring that giant suitcase into the present and the future. And you don't want to choose that. You want to choose to leave it behind you. So honor it, love it, mwah, peace out. I'm moving on.
Laura, Byron Katie, I love her book, Loving What Is. That's one of my favorite. And she has like interventions all over YouTube. Her videos are incredible. But one of the things that she says that really resonate with me was, I used to live in the past, reliving and re-punishing myself over and over again, as if the more I punish myself, the more I'm worthy. Now that I've punished myself enough, maybe I'm now worthy of something. I deserved all this self-abuse. But what it is, she said, was the past is not real at this point. It already happened. It no longer exists. The only reason the past exists is in your head, because you keep repeating the story over and over again.
Yeah.
The only thing that's real is what you are doing and saying and thinking right now. The past already happened. That's a movie that's playing in your head over and over again. It is no longer real. It exists only in your mind. And so when I understood that, I was like, you're right. It's not even real. And it's a story. And the other thing is that that's the past, but a lot of people also, their fears, they're playing a movie in their head that never even happened to them. I have this autoimmune disease and this autoimmune disease. I'm going to die. Nobody's going to help me. And yes, I get it. But you know what? That never happened to you, actually. Those are all the stories you read on Google that you're repeating in your head over and over again. Has it actually happened to you? And no, that didn't happen to them, but they have a movie that they are living as if it did happen to them, and it's not even real for them.
Oh, right? Just like the conversation that I had with you, Maggie, before I joined phase 2. That was my come to Jesus conversation with you. And I was like, but then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And you're like,
I'm like laughing.
So you're creating all these stories in your brain and creating your own suffering, and none of it is valid. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. I needed to hear that.
None of that shit was real, Laura.
No, it wasn't. It totally came out of nowhere.
What are you talking about? Like, it didn't even happen to you. You read that on Google somewhere and now it's real?
Probably. I don't even know.
And I think
Google turntable.
That keeps us physically sick, right? Because from what I've been learning, the brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy, right? So whatever you're thinking about, the body responds to that. That's why you can think about your traumatic incident and all of a sudden your heart's beating faster, your chest is tight, your cortisol is going. It's not actually happening, but if you're thinking about it, your body responds as if it's happening, right? Yeah. So to me, the more I kept Googling, the more I kept, thinking about the traumatic things that happened, the more I stayed sick because my body was in a state of constant stress, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to heal when you're always stressed out.
Yeah, the brain responds to physical wound. For emotional wounds, the brain does not see the difference there. It does not. So it will give you a somatic response in some fashion.
Monica, that happened to me even 2 weeks ago. I had a tense conversation with someone. Intellectually, I was fine. My brain said, Maggie, you're great. And physically, my body responded like I had a gunshot wound to my gut.
Yeah.
I like fell on the ground. I was like, "Ooh!" Like I got off the phone and I was like, "Whoa!" But my brain's fine.
Yeah.
So, but the body kept score. The body knew that this was some trauma that happened to you. No matter how much you intellectualized it, your body knew.
Yeah.
But that's like something happened. But imagine if I repeated the story of what happened over and over. She hurt my feelings. She destroyed me. And I just kept reliving it. I didn't relive it anymore, but like I made a conscious decision not to do that because I made a conscious decision not to inflict further physical and emotional trauma on myself.
You're just riling yourself up at that point.
Creating suffering, and it's no longer, it's already past. It already happened. It's no longer real in existence anymore.
Yeah.
Question: how did each of you cross your bridge, like personal experience wise? Ooh. And just to give you guys myself as an example, we have tons of mindset tools and trainings in our program. And one of the trainings is called How to Rewrite Your Story. And what I recognized was when I had all that bad stuff happen to me, I kept repeating the story and I kept manifesting in every area of my life. I kept looking for people who are going to screw me, people who are going to take from me, people who are evil. That's all I found. And I kept saying I needed to protect myself more and more and more. And at a certain point, at my lowest point where I was super lonely, super scared and super sick, I got to my lowest point and I really had to make the decision and I learned about this tool, Changing Your Story, which is why that tool exists in our program. And I literally sat and wrote down what my old story was, what the beliefs that fed that old story was, and what I believed about myself. And I said, what is my new story? And what are the new beliefs I believe about myself? I literally rewrote the story. I reread it, physically owned every single part of my new story in every cell of my body. That is why I am here today. That is the only reason why I'm here today, is because I chose to change my story from victim to being responsible, from being constricted in a straitjacket of fear and hell to being free to actually choose to have choice. When you take choice back, you take power back. This didn't just happen to me. I have choice here. That's my power back. That's what I did to cross the other side. And that's why these tools exist in our program, in our mindset work. I'm interested in how each of you overcame your biggest fear to be able to actually have this huge health turnaround for yourselves.
Yeah, gosh, narrative is so important, isn't it? Like the narrative that you tell yourself about your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of my major turnarounds too. It looks a little bit different than yours, but I would say my major narrative that I'd been carrying was one of fear. And it was fear about, I was born and bred to be a pleaser. And so it was a lot of fear about other people, disappointing other people, having conflict with other people, upsetting other people. It had a lot to do with other people at my own expense. And so after a series of, I started doing forgiveness work and doing these visualizations. And in one of these visualizations, I was able to really see how some of the major traumatic events in my life, how they happened for me instead of to me. And so once I could see that things actually happen for me instead of to me, I could start appreciating all the obstacles. I could sort of write a new narrative around trauma. I got to drop a lot of the fear that I had been carrying. So to me, that was one of the hugest shifts that I had.
For me, it was interesting because I encourage this to people all the time. I'm like, get mad. Because when you're feeling depressed and anxious and ashamed and guilty, guilt is huge for me, right? And you're doubting and all of that is going on, that's because you have unprocessed anger. That's because you have not fully addressed or used your voice in a way for yourself or, in a context with other people. And so for me, I had to be mad at the medical system, right? I had to be like, I'm good.
Damn you.
So good. Right, exactly. I've been so good for so long, but now I started getting that pain from my gallbladder and I was just like, yeah. And so that's good though, because it's mobilizing, Anger is mobilizing, and it's actually at a much higher vibration than all those other emotions. So it's like, mobilize that, allow that momentum to begin. And then for me, it was taking that full responsibility. And I had it mindset wise mostly, but I needed it in terms of action, in terms of taking consistent action towards my own well-being.
Yeah. For me was to let go of the shame,
Mm.
to let go of the shame of not knowing. I had to forgive myself. The knowledge that I didn't have, I had to forgive myself for that. So that was one of my way of forgiveness to self, and then the people who were not able to give me that information also.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that they were evil or trying to keep
No,
something from you. They didn't know
they
themselves.
didn't know. What they didn't have, they couldn't give to me. They
Yep.
couldn't.
And think about being a doctor too. Like, I can't be mad at doctors because I myself
Yeah.
gave that crappy advice to people when they were sick with autoimmune disease and I didn't have it and I wasn't trained to know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
I gave that bad advice, right? Not because I didn't care, but I didn't have any training on actually how to deal with these real root causes at all. So I had to actually forgive myself. And not because I was a bad doctor. I wasn't a bad doctor. I was a good doctor, a caring doctor, but I didn't know any better. And I had to get sick myself. Talk about life happening for you.
Yeah.
I had to get sick, really sick, to actually humble myself to go and learn all these other alternative ways to save my own life.
Yeah.
So life was happening for me because that was what it took to get me to this place where I can learn to trust myself, I can learn to help myself, and now I can actually learn how to teach other people how to do that. So it really, life was happening for me that I got sick with super special zebra number 55. But life is and hey, if I look at it this way, if I wasn't embezzled and I didn't have that happen to me, I wouldn't also have been forced to think outside the box, to think, are there other things that I can do besides owning a medical clinic?
Mm-hmm.
Am I even happy working in a medical clinic? Did it even get results the way I wanted it to? It really pushed and forced me to say, hey, think outside the box, lady, do something different. What do you got to lose? That's how this online program was actually born, was, in a space where I had to question, this really awful thing happened. So I have an opportunity here to try something different or do something different because I have nothing more left to lose right now. Right. So that's life happening for me. And I'm so grateful. I am so damn glad that all these things happen because I wouldn't be a fraction of the person I am today without it. That didn't mean it wasn't hard.
Mhm.
Right. But life was happening for me.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful perspective. That's exactly, I tell people all the time, I'm like, I am so thankful I got sepsis. I'm so thankful that I was 30 minutes away from not making it, because honestly, I needed to get smacked in the head in a way that, like, I had awareness of certain things, but it was just like, I was successful. I was happy. I was good. I just didn't realize that phenomenal existed. Right. And
Yeah.
so I needed to be smacked across the head to be like, wait, I can do things differently. And actually, it might even be much better than what I already have. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the thing for me is once I actually changed my story, it's brought the best people ever in my life.
Oh my goodness.
I have the most loving, generous, kind group of people that are my close friends. And the people that have joined the program that I've had the opportunity to be blessed with, none of you would be in my life if that had not happened to me. So thank God I was embezzled.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I was embezzled, to be honest. And it's just like Laura says, thank goodness for sepsis. It's hard to look at that way and turn it around the way, but that is the truth. I would None of you ladies, none of all the beautiful people I've worked with over the last 5 years in our program, many of which have become friends, none of that would have happened had I not gotten sick, had I not been embezzled, period. Right. So that is true. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I hope that for everybody, this was helpful to give you some insight just around walking through the fear, walking through skepticism, walking through self blame, walking through being a victim, and some tools on how to be responsible, how to change your story, how to make choices, how to use laughter, self-care, and the community support to actually be able to turn this around and interrupt this pattern. So thank you, ladies, for joining me. And all right, what I'm going to do is if any of you are interested in learning more about our program, go ahead and you can just type interested in the comment section below. Tell us a little bit about you. You can also join our Facebook group, which is called Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally, or you could check out drmaggie.com. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And ladies, thank you so much for sharing so deeply about your own journey and all your insights.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Maggie.
Thank you.